Hello and welcome to Prime Minister's Questions, watch party here on Politics Social. I'm Graham Hughes. It hasn't started yet. It should be starting in the next minute or so, I thought. I'm watching live. Might be wrong. Maybe they're holding off for half an hour just to make things difficult. I've just been listening to the Grenfell inquiry statements. Oh yes, here we go. We're coming to Prime Minister's Questions. Here we go, Bill Esterson.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Met him. Question 1. Will the Prime Minister list his official engagements?
Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to congratulate our Team GB Olympic and Paralympic athletes and support staff for their outstanding achievements so far. Mr. Speaker, yesterday's incident in the Channel was shocking and deeply tragic, and our thoughts are with all those who've lost their lives and their families. We must have a renewed determination to end this. And Mr. Speaker, the chair of the Grenfell Tower inquiry, Sir Martin Morbick, has today published the inquiry's Phase 2 report. And I know that the whole House will be, thoughts of the House will be with the bereaved and the survivors of the Grenfell Power tragedy and the residents in the immediate community. I will be making a statement shortly after PMQs today. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, and in addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about the loss of life in the Channel and about Grenfell? The latest suicide figures are a sobering reminder of the misery caused by mental ill health. McGall Health Park in my constituency is a centre of excellence with high, medium and low security hospitals on the same site. The staff do an amazing job, but demand has gone through the roof, especially since the pandemic. Does my right honourable friend agree that it is essential that we have the same level of priority for mental health care and physical health care in this country?
Yes.
Yes, and I thank my honourable friend for raising this critical issue. I think so many are affected by the tragedy of suicide. I'm pleased to hear about the work that he refers to, but 1 million people are not getting the support, the mental health support that they need. Yeah. And that is why we will recruit 8,500 mental health workers to treat adults and children, and bring forward legislation to modernise the Mental Health Act, an act which I think is well overdue for modernisation. Thank you.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Rishi Sunak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I join with the Prime Minister in paying tribute to the Grenfell community? And we're going to rightly discuss that important issue shortly after PMQs. Can I also join him in congratulating our record-breaking Olympians and Paralympians on everything that they have achieved? And lastly, could I just pay tribute to the hard work, bravery and dedication of our police? This summer, in challenging circumstances, they served our communities commendably and kept us all safe. Now, Mr. Speaker, government is about making choices, and the new Prime Minister has made a choice. He has chosen to take the winter fuel allowance away from low-income pensioners and give that money to certain unionised workforces in inflation-busting payrolls.
That's absolute nonsense. It's not how it works, and the poorest are going to get even more money than ever before.
Train drivers over Britain's vulnerable pensioners.
What a disgusting line. What a disgusting
Speaker,
line.
This government was elected to clear up the mess left by the party opposition, to bring about the change that the country desperately needs. Our first job was to audit the books, and what we found was a £22 billion black hole.
Yeah.
It's no good them complaining. Richard Hughes, the chair of the OBR, was very clear. He described it as one of the largest year-over overspends against forecast outside of the pandemic. His words.
Wow.
So we've had to take tough decisions to stabilise the economy and repair the damage, including targeting winter fuel payments.
Say that pensioners are going to get more money?
800,000 pensioners are not taking up pension credit. We intend to turn that around.
Yeah.
We're going to align housing benefit and pension
It's got
credit.
nothing to do with paying
the previous
drivers.
government deferred year after year after year. And because of our commitment to the triple lock, pensions are projected to increase by over £1,000 in the next 5 years.
Rishi Sunak.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister also
wasn't a very good
inherited
response,
inflation
to be
back
honest
at
with you.
target, interest rates being cut, unemployment low, and indeed the fastest growing economy in the G7, Mr. Speaker.
God, how many times are you going to put us out that lie?
But that's not the point, because the Prime Minister now has to start
Lies.
taking responsibility for his own decision. And if, as he says, the public finances are a priority, it was his decision, and
only
his
got a different
decision
setup
alone,
today, don't you?
to award a train driver on £65,000 a pay rise of almost £10,000. And it was also his decision that a pensioner living on just £13,000 will have their winter fuel allowance removed.
That's not true. That's not true.
So
He's
can the
talking
Prime
absolute
Minister
bollocks there.
explain
If you're living
to
off that
Britain's
much, you're not getting a
low-income
cut.
pensioners why he has taken money away from them whilst at the same time given more money to highly paid train drivers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we spent the whole election with him trying to tell the country that everything was fine, and this is the result they got. A massive mandate on this side to change the country. And if he carries on pretending everything is fine for ordinary people across the country, they're going to be there for a very, very long time. And I remind him that we inherited absolute chaos from the party opposite. We lost an average of 3 million working days a year to strikes under his watch. And you cannot fix the economy if the trains don't work, and you can't fix the economy if the NHS isn't working. And when it comes to winter fuel payments, they're having a competition, as I'd say. They're going to be voting later on today. Well, his shadow housing minister, we found this. She's the favourite, I think. Some of them will be probably voting for her this afternoon. She said, her words, "I have people in my constituency telling me they don't need winter fuel payments. Why do we not have a more sophisticated mechanism for mean testing?" That's their favourite, I think, in the contest that they are having.
Rishi Sunak.
Mr. Speaker, again, the Prime Minister talked about the public finances. The UK's public
It's a lot less
finances are
sombre than
more
I thought it would
robust
be.
than almost that of any other major advanced economy. Here we have it. He inherited a lower deficit than France, America, Italy.
Order. When I do point you to be quiet, I do mean it. I don't need a reaction back like that. Rishi Sunak.
Well, the UK currently has a lower deficit than France, America, Italy and Japan. It has the second lowest debt in the entire G7. And he opposed every difficult decision that we took to deliver that. So I certainly am not going to take any
he's actually
lecture
said
from him
delivering.
on that side.
Delivering.
But he talked about protecting ordinary people. Well, last year, under the Conservative government, a low-income pensioner
Sorry.
just £13,000
Need to
received
sort out these
not
graphics,
only
don't I?
the winter fuel payment, but also hundreds of pounds of additional cost of living support, both of which he has now scrapped. Age UK have said cutting the winter fuel allowance is the wrong policy. And only this morning, we've learnt that the vast majority of the poorest
Just banging on
pensioners,
about the
pensioners in poverty,
winter fuel
are
allowance.
going to see
No one's mentioned
that vital
the people
support
who died in the channel
removed.
yesterday.
So can he tell the House, very specifically to the pensioners that are watching, how much less support a pensioner on £13,000 will receive this winter?
He talks about tough decisions. It's tough to inherit tough £22 billion black hole, which the OBR did not need.
I need to make a 22 million pound black hole.
When they were in government, they'd have pretended it wasn't there. They'd have walked past it, put it in the long grass. We're not going to do that because we were elected to change this country for the better and stabilise our economy. No Prime Minister wants to do what we have to do in relation to the winter fuel allowance, but we have to take the tough decision to stabilise our economy to ensure that we can grow it for the future. And as I've said, we are working hard on pension credit. We're allowing housing benefits, which they didn't do for years, and over 5 years, it's a projected increase of up to £1,000 for those on pensions. We are tough decisions that they done.
Rishi Sunak.
the government doesn't have to choose to take money off low-income pensioners in order to give it to highly paid train drivers. That is a choice that he has made, and it will be clear to any pensioners watching that he simply can't explain why he has made that choice. But, Mr. Speaker, turning to another important issue. The government has suspended 30 of the UK's 350 arms export licences to Israel. It's a decision that the Chief Rabbi says beggars belief and will encourage our shared enemies. Can the Prime Minister therefore explain how his decision will help to secure the release of the 101 hostages still being held by Hamas?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I start by saying I think the whole House will be shocked by the horrific killing of 6 hostages in the last few days. And I know I speak for the whole House when I say that. The remaining hostages must be released, and we need a ceasefire to ensure that that can happen, that aid desperately needed can get into the region, and we can begin the path to a two-state solution. Now, he asks how we arrived at this decision. He knows very well, because the legal framework is clear. The latest guidance was issued in 2021 under his government, and that means that licences have to be kept under review, as they were by his government. And I think he probably knows the advice that was given to his government. He understands the framework. We've carried out the review in the same way and come to a clear legal conclusion, and shared that conclusion, the assessment, with Parliament. We will, of course, continue to stand by Israel's right to self-defence, but it is important that we are a country committed to the international rule of law. That gives us the strength of argument with our allies on important issues. This is a difficult issue, I recognise that, but it's a legal decision, not a policy decision. And the Prime Minister knows the framework, and they shout, they issued the guidance, they know what the test is, that test has been assessed, we've come to a conclusion, and we've put that before the House to consider.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the Prime Minister's answer, but he'll know that decisions like this also have important and broader geopolitical implications. And he mentioned allies. It's essential that we maintain transatlantic unity in the face of terrorist threats and avoid any perception of splits between our two nations. So can he therefore update the House or tell the House what engagement he had with the United States prior to taking this significant decision?
Prime Minister.
I acknowledge the importance of working with our allies on all issues, as we have been doing, as I was able to make very clear at the NATO summit that I attended in the early summer. And of course, as he would expect, as the House would expect, we have talked this through with our allies. They understand. They have a different legal system.
Just keep it accidentally calling Sunak the Prime Minister.
This is a serious issue. It requires serious consideration. And the Prime Minister knows the legal framework. He knows the legal framework.
The Prime Minister knows the legal framework.
That applying
He's not the Prime Minister anymore, Kia.
Kia,
get with the programme, Kia.
Arriving at a decision does not permit me to simply then say I'm not going to implement the legal decision and conclusion that's been reached. I don't think he's really inviting me to do that.
Stop calling in the Prime Minister.
Not only do these decisions have geopolitical consequences, but they also have emotional ones too. And the Prime Minister took this action on the very same day as the funerals of Israeli hostages murdered by Hamas. It's something that the Board of Deputies described as a terrible, terrible message to be sending. And I hope the Prime Minister understands the hurt that has been caused, and can he take this opportunity to reassure Israel and the Jewish community that the United Kingdom and this House stands behind Israel and its right to self-defence.
Prime Minister.
Let me be very clear about that. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We absolutely recognise and support Israel's right to self-defence and have taken action in support of that right of self-defence. And I've made that repeatedly clear in all of my engagements with Israel across the region and with all of our allies. I absolutely stand by that. But in relation to licences, this isn't an Israel issue. It's the framework for all licences that have to be kept under review. It's the same test for all licences, as the Prime Minister knows. And having applied the law to the facts and come to a legal conclusion, I don't think the Prime Minister is really inviting me to put that to one side.
He's not the Prime Minister.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Yeah, thank you, Kia.
This is a serious issue. We either comply with international law or we don't. And we only have strength in our
called the PM
arguments
about 4
because we
times
comply
now.
with international law. I appreciate the party opposite didn't think that international law mattered, and that's why we got into the pickle that we did.
What happened?
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Home Office's
We're getting
decision
used
to
to,
close the
not being
Billy
the leader of the
Stockholm
opposition,
barge in my constituency. We all know this barge is a gimmick. First, it arrived late. Second, it cost the taxpayer a fortune. Third, it was laden with fire and disease risks. And fourth, it likely contributed to the death of a 27-year-old asylum seeker on board. So can the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that this unworkable gimmick and similar unworkable gimmicks will be closed down as we clear up the mess from the party opposite?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. Unlike the party opposite, we won't waste money
The
on
ex-crime
gimmicks.
miniature.
And that's why within days we ended the Rwanda scheme, we announced the launch of the Border Security Force, and we're preparing legislation to introduce counter-terrorism powers to tackle gangs. And in the first 2 months, we've removed more than 400 people on planes who had no right to be here. Compare that with the 4 volunteers sent to Rwanda that cost £700 million. This is a government of service, not a government of gimmicks.
Here comes the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Trev Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thought you said Trev Cavey
Can I
then.
echo the Prime Minister's words
Ed
about
Davey,
the
not Trev Cavey.
terrible tragedy at Grenfell. Welcome the inquiry and look forward to the statement we'll discuss shortly. Mr. Speaker, for the last 18 years, Norman has been a full-time carer for his wife, Ros, who has MS and Alzheimer's disease. Early this year, he was forced to go back to work to earn the extra money for the cost of caring for his wife. As their income is just a few £100 above the limit for pension credit, they're set to lose their winter fuel
Open,
allowance.
safe and legal routes. Yeah,
unless the
keep it
Prime
longer,
Minister
couldn't agree
listens to
more.
these benches and others and changes this plan. So, if he doesn't, what advice does the Prime Minister have to Norman and Ros and millions of struggling pensioners as they face rising heating bills this winter?
Prime Minister.
I thank the honourable member for raising that important question. I know how much
don't call
he,
her Davy the Prime
both
Minister and
politically
all,
and
mate.
personally has championed carers. We have taken a difficult decision, and I'm not pretending it's not a difficult decision. Of course it's a difficult decision, because we have to stabilise the economy. We have to stabilise the economy. We went through, the first thing the Chancellor did was an audit. She found £22 billion worth of unfunded spending commitments. We can't walk past that. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. That's what the last government did. Have to take tough decisions. We will put all the support in that we can. Obviously talk to the learned gentleman about this, but we have to take the tough decisions in relation to this. They walked away from those decisions. That what got us into the mess in the first place. You can't grow your economy, you can't fix your economy unless you stabilise it first.
Ed Davey.
Really answer
Can I
the
say
question
to
there.
the Prime Minister, we recognise the appalling financial problems left to him by the last Conservative government. But can I say, no one understands the difficult decisions you need to take to balance the books as unpaid family carers like Norman. So many millions of pensioners have struggled over recent years thanks to the last government. The number of pensioners who can't afford to heat their homes has doubled since 2019. So will the Prime Minister support our campaign for more urgent action to invest in insulation and renewables so we can help pensioners and all families make it cheaper to heat their homes every winter?
Yes, of course. And I remind him that there are 800,000 pensioners who are not claiming pension credit, which of course then deals with the winter payment allowance. And so that's why we are taking so much care to ensure that we can get them onto pension credit. Again, aligning housing benefit with pension credit, something they left undone for years, will make a massive difference. And of course the triple lock, which over 5 years will mean pensions are expected to rise by up to £1,000.
Yes, we correct you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 years ago, the previous government ordered a review into the hormone pregnancy test drug Primodos and found that the drug had caused avoidable harm. Primodos was given to women in the 1960s and the 70s and resulted in many babies being born with severe disabilities. For the last 12 years, I have stood in this Parliament and pleaded with the last government repeatedly to do the right thing. So I ask the Prime Minister today, will he commit to take a fresh approach to this issue, and will he meet with me and the campaigner Marie Lyon to discuss how we can give closure to the families who have been denied justice for the last 50 years?
Well, I thank her for that question and for her work on the APPG. I am sympathetic to the families who believe their children suffered from these tests and committed to reviewing any new evidence which comes to light. Mr. Speaker, at the moment the Health Department is reviewing a publication from Professor Danielson and we'll follow the results of that review. And I'm happy to ensure that the Health Minister does meet her to discuss this further.
Gavin Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Prime Minister for visiting Northern Ireland within the last fortnight, and particularly for the time he spent with injured officers of the police service of Northern Ireland. He will know of their courage, but he will also know of the dogged determination of our Chief Constable John Boucher in his desire to see adequate resourcing for his officers who not only stand for law and order in Northern Ireland, but stand in the face of racism, violence and of an ongoing national security threat from dissident Republicans. So can I therefore ask him to earnestly and urgently engage in a discussion about uplifting the national security grant afforded to the Police Service of Northern Ireland and ensure that the PSNI can face the challenges that we need them to face head on?
Well, I thank him for that question, and it was important for me to go to Belfast to meet the injured officers and to say simply thank you for what they are doing and, of course, the impact it has on their families. I do recognise the difficult financial position the PSNI faces, and the Chief Constable and I have spoken about this on more than one occasion, as you would expect. I mean, predominantly it's for the Justice Minister and the Executive to set the PSNI's budget, and an operational matter for the Chief Constable in relation to how he allocates that. But I have been talking to him about what further support might be possible, because I do realise just how important it is to him and to the PSNI and to Northern Ireland more generally.
Emma Foodie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, ticket-selling websites like Ticketmaster left millions of Oasis fans furious. But worse still came minutes later when tickets started to be relisted online for thousands of pounds. This profiteering at fans' expense is not a one-off. The cooperative party's campaigning for a new licensing body with real teeth to tackle this online touting. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that fans should be at the heart of live music and that urgent action is needed to protect fans against this horrid practice?
Yes, I do. And firstly, it's great that our
consultation
together. I think, from what I've determined, about half the country is probably queuing for tickets over the weekend. But it is depressing to hear of price hikes. I'm committed to putting fans at the heart of music and end extortionate price resales, and we're starting a consultation to work out how best we can do this.
Harriet Cross.
That's already been announced, by the way.
Mr. Speaker, Offshore Energies UK reports that the government's proposed windfall tax increases will cost our economy £13 billion, risk 35,000 jobs, and see investment in the North Sea slashed from £14.1 billion to just £2.3 billion by 2029. It also suggests that there's going to be a £12 billion cost in tax revenues. How does this proposal chime with the Prime Minister's goal of economic growth? And will he reverse this tax increase, which industry leaders are calling economic suicide for the oil and gas sector?
Mr. Speaker, we're committed to the transition that is necessary in relation to energy to renewables, which will lead to cheaper energy, energy independence and the jobs of the future. But let me be clear, oil and gas will play its part for many years to come, and that's why we've been really clear about the support that we have for oil and gas. And I'm sure she and others will want to celebrate the fact that just this week, Contracts for Difference secured a record 131 new clean energy projects, enough to power 11 million homes, and that is the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister will remember visiting my constituency in June, where we toured Germany Beck, a fantastic development of 600 new homes. But because of Tory dither and delay, it took the best part of a decade for that site to get through planning. You can grumble all you want, but my families are paying the price for their mistakes. Can the Prime Minister reassure me that this government will speed up the planning process so we can get more homes built, and will one of his ministers meet with me to discuss the housing crisis in York?
Yes, I remember that visit well, and was struck by the delays in planning because the system was broken by the previous government. We will deliver 1.5 million new homes, Mr. Speaker, drive economic growth and fulfil the dream of home ownership, shattered for 14 years under the former government.
Get delivering there?
And that means changing the planning rules, a tough decision they were not prepared to make that happen and to grow our economy. Thank you.
So about my graphics here. They're all in the wrong place.
SSE, the
Delivering,
operators
that's better.
of the new Viking Energy wind farm in Shetland, were paid £2 million in order not to generate any electricity from it. Is there not something badly wrong with an energy market that pays big corporates not to produce electricity, while the people living amongst the turbines endure some of the highest levels of fuel poverty in the country? So will the Prime Minister and the Government now look seriously at the idea of an islands tariff, so that islands communities such as those represented by me and by his honourable friend from the Helen and the Near may see some genuine benefit for the community from hosting renewable energy developments such as this?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for raising this issue, which is obviously
power to the people. You're right. I do need a £22 billion.
The National Grid, as he knows, does balance the grid by occasionally requesting some generators to stop when there's not enough capacity on the network. That's not good enough. That's not acceptable for the reasons
Keir Starmer called him Prime Minister 4 times.
Question. It's a problem that wasn't fixed over the last 14 years, but a problem we are determined to fix as we go forward. And I will make sure that a relevant minister speaks to him about the particular issue in his constituency.
Dr. Peter Princely.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. As a surgeon from East Anglia, I welcome the measures the new government has taken to fulfil its mission to fix the NHS. In my constituency of Bury St Edmunds and Stowmarket, the West Suffolk Hospital is badly affected by RAC. Just like the James Paget Hospital in Norfolk, where I've worked for nearly 30 years. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the RAC hospitals must be priorities as the new government undertakes its review of the new hospital programme?
Yes. I thank him for his question, and also he brings huge expertise to this area. We have to reset the new hospital programme and put it on a sustainable footing. The last government promised 40 new hospitals. The problem is there weren't 40, they weren't new, and some of them weren't even hospitals. Hospitals with RAC will, of course, including West Suffolk Hospital, must be a priority. So we're reviewing the programme, and the Secretary of State will update Parliament as soon as possible.
Shaw.
After 14 miserable years of the worst Tory government in modern times, the best this Prime Minister can offer the British people is things can only get worse. Well, for him and his calamitous opinion ratings, that's probably true. But why does he think he has such an unprecedented fall in his popularity? Is it his attacks on the pensioners? Is it leaving children in poverty? Is it the re-emergence of Labour cronyism? Or is it because his austerity is even worse than the Conservative variety?
Wow. He's not a happy man, is he?
I remember when they used to sit here. It's a long way up and there's very few of them, so I don't think we need lectures on popularity.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That was easily swatted away.
News, on the changes, there's government plans around Ofsted, including the removal of single-word judgments. This is great news for head teachers in West Lancashire who've raised this issue with me, along with other issues around Ofsted, and for parents who will have more transparency on the performance of schools. How does the Prime Minister see these changes developing a more positive relationship between Ofsted, government and schools, and improving standards so that all our young people can thrive?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're committed to the best education for every child, whatever their background and wherever they come from. The current single grade does not work well, and that's why we're going to have a richer dashboard which will give parents more information and allow intervention more quickly, and that's why it's been so warmly welcomed across the country.
Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am new to this House, but I know that we all want our pensioners to live with dignity and security. In my constituency of Reigate, there are around 17,000 pensioners expected to lose their winter fuel payment this year. Of most concern are those just above the pension credit threshold who will be hardest hit. Would the Prime Minister give consideration to broadening the eligibility for the winter fuel payment so that those low-income pensioners who rely on it to stay warm can continue to benefit?
Can I welcome her to her place? And Reigate is obviously a place I know very well, as she knows. But the reality is this decision has been taken because of the £22 billion black card. So responsibility...
Yeah, definitely got to make a card of £22 million.
...lies with the party that broke the economy. There's a reason we have a mandate for change, and there's a reason that this party is now sitting there, and that's because they broke the economy. And I'm not going to apologise for clearing up the mess.
I'm not going to take lectures. I'm not going to take lectures. Needs to be a card, and 22 billion needs to be a card.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 14 years of Conservative failure, crime and street drinking now blight areas of Southall Town Centre, West Ealing and Hanwell Broadway in my constituency of Ealing Southall. So can the Prime Minister set out how his government will take action to ensure our town centres are transformed into places where my constituency can finally feel safe again?
Thank you. This is an important issue, Mr. Speaker, and I've heard too many people say that antisocial behaviour is some sort of low-level issue. It really impacts lives across the country. We have to tackle it, and that's why we will put more police on the streets. We will have more effective powers to deal with antisocial behaviour, and we'll introduce Young Futures programmes to divert young people who are getting into trouble.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Question number 14, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Schools Minister will be happy to visit his constituency.
Sir Ashley Fox.
I thank the Prime Minister for his answer. Haygrove School is one of the top-performing schools in Somerset. It is unfortunately one of those built by Caledonian Modular and now condemned as unsafe. So I'm grateful for the meeting with the Schools Minister, but can the Prime Minister give Haygrove School and the other schools affected an assurance that they will be rebuilt and quickly? Because those pupils and staff are still working in porter cabins.
I'm grateful. I do recognise how serious an issue this is and why he raises it. It is of real importance. The Minister will visit, and the Department of Education is pursuing all available avenues for redress against the parties responsible for the issues at the school. But I will make sure that the Minister is fully briefed and has a full discussion about this when that visit takes place.
Sean Davis.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a proud MP for a new town, but over the last 14 years, Telford has lost its A&E. Less police officers, GPs, teachers per head, and we've also had 40% cuts to our local government budgets. Will my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, back places like Telford rather than overlook us, as has been the case over these last 14 years?
Prime Minister.
I thank him for raising this issue, and I know he'll be a really strong champion for his constituency. We're a government that will be based on actions, not slogans, and that's why we'll have local growth plans,
22 billion.
Improve public services,
22 billion black hole.
invest in transport links. We will fix the mess that they left after 14 years, and we will devolve
Needs
power
14
to
years
those
one
with
as well, don't
skin
we?
in the game.
Tim Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the last 5 years, there have been 10 fatal accidents on the A66 along the short stretch in the Eden Valley in Westmoreland. So in our community, we are naturally deeply concerned that the vital A66 Northern Transpennine project, which would make the roads considerably safer, has been put under review by this government. Will the Prime Minister take the opportunity now and end this uncertainty today, commit to this project and save lives?
I thank him for raising this question about fatalities on roads, and that is a very serious issue in relation to the A66 and other roads across the country. We have inherited a broken economy. We have to review what we're spending money on. We're going through that review and we'll report back as soon as we can.
Gurinder Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join me in sending condolences to the family of Jadzia Koch, a 13-year-old boy who was stabbed and tragically killed in my constituency? Does the Prime Minister share my concerns about the prevalence of young people carrying knives, and what more can be done to end this scourge that is destroying families and communities?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure I speak for the whole House in saying our thoughts are with Jazia's family at this difficult time. This is tragic, it is senseless, and the age just absolutely makes one shudder. Our mission is to halve knife crime. Zombie-style knives and zombie-style machetes will be banned from the 24th of September, and there'll be a surrender scheme which has been started on 26th of August. And we are doing a rapid review on online sale of knives, which is often a problem in these cases. So we will pursue that with determination, and I invite everybody across the House, in light of this and so many other tragic cases, to join with us on that mission.
Final question, Karen Bradley.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Those of us from Staffordshire Moorlands are immensely proud of our beautiful area and unique identity. So can the Prime Minister guarantee that we will not be forced into a devolution deal or local government reorganisation against our will?
I think it's very important that local people have a say, but it's equally important that we do devolve to those who have skin in the game. And one of the ways in which we can restart our economy is making sure that those with skin in the game take the decisions that are relevant to them and their area.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. I'll let those who are leaving the chamber leave quickly before we start the statement. Okay,
right. Thanks very much for joining us there for Prime Minister's questions. We're going to leave it at that. I've got something else to go and record now, so we're not going to hang around for the statement about the Grenfell tragedy. Obviously, the report has been published today at 11 o'clock. There's already been statements made by the judge who was chairing the report, and I will be horrified if criminal convictions don't stem from this. Just they talked about incompetence to some extent, but some of it was just flat out greed, and that is. Yeah, it's not great. Okay, also what was not great was the fact that Keir Starmer called Rishi Sunak the Prime Minister 4 or 5 times in that PMQs, which is probably what that PMQs is going to be remembered for. Also, I just want to say before I go, I was a bit discombobulated too, because I'm watching on the screen and I keep seeing people who look to the right of the camera asking questions. I think, oh, it must be a Tory. I don't recognise them. But no, it's Labour, because they're on the right of the screen now, if you're looking from the speaker's angle, and Labour, see, I'm doing it now. Conservatives, the SNP, Lib Dems, they're all on the left. So, yeah, a bit of discombobulation all round there. But thanks for sticking with us in this watch party. We'll try and do an episode of The Intersection tonight at 6 o'clock. I'll let you know if that's actually going ahead later this afternoon. I've got a few things to organise first. But whether that goes ahead or not, Phil Morehouse will be back in the morning at 9:30 for Morning Brew, so please join us for that. Thank you for all the lovely messages, all the chats, and until next time, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.